Happy birthday, my friend. Nancy, I almost asked to meet you today. I was going to
I'm
deliver.
sorry,
What's that?
what did you say?
I said I almost asked to meet you today while you were working. I was going to deliver those pickles to you.
It's just you and me right now?
You me and the set. I usually start about 5 after.
Oh, okay, no worries. I'm pretending to be busy. We're at FMA today. Now I was able to use last time I think last week you talked about, was it here or was it morning restoration? No, communications in morning restoration. Okay, so it was morning restoration. How you said that sometimes, not sometimes that no, it was last Wednesday. Now I remember why. Anyway, we sometimes use people as subjects, objects, and don't work on their relationship. And that happened last night at home. I came in, and I was expecting certain things to be done, and of course they were halfway done. So, and whatever happened, and I was just like, you know what? That's not how I want to go to bed. Like that's not how I want to go to bed. I haven't seen the kids all day long. We've been working on all these things, and in spite of not being as I wanted, it was work towards it. So I should see the effort in that. And so, yeah, I went back and I was like, girls, of course it was the girls, especially one. And I had that little conversation and I got a hug and a thank you after that. And I was like, see, that's okay. Yeah, that's what I want at the end of the day. Like the dishes can stay there, but I was like, yeah, their relationship. Not picture me because there's a lot of noise in the background now.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm still having, I don't know why I have internet problems on Zoom. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know what's going on. All right, I will go ahead and get started. And hopefully my internet will be enough. See, we shall see. All right, so thank you all for being here. We are in the last month of our summer wellness series. And this week we're focusing on situational leadership. Last week we talked about specifically the topic of situational leadership. We looked at how that's defined, and we also looked at the heart of peace and the idea of in leadership needing to make sure that the people that we encounter, learning how to not see them as objects, but remembering to see them as individuals and as people. So we're going to continue with the leadership portion. And tonight we are looking at restorative leadership. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And not just leading, but honing our leadership skills and making sure we get the most out of it. And get, excuse me, continuing that effort to grow relationships and not be overtaken by the moment or the task at hand, but always keeping people first. So we'll look at our agenda here in just a minute. So we'll have a check-in and then we'll get into the topic a little more. And then we'll look at empathy and connection, accountability and growth, and community impact. And then we'll check out with kind of a recap of what we went through. So that's what we have in store this evening. So my check-in question has to do with where we find ourselves this evening. If you could choose, thinking of the good leaders and maybe the leaders that needed some work, you think of a leader that you were aware of, for whatever reason, I'll leave that up to you, whether they're exemplary leader or a leader that was struggling, what is one leader that you wish could join, a person that you wish would be able to join the meeting tonight if you were able to pick someone to join? Who is someone that you would appreciate being in this session tonight from your past or your current interaction with people? Person that has been your leader in the past that you think would benefit from being in the session tonight? That's our check-in question for tonight.
Okay, good evening.
Evening.
I would say my last boss, Misty, she was always determined to better herself and hone in on her skills. So that's who I would want to be here.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Leader in your past that you could have them join you, who would that be?
Sorry, I'm having such a hard time with the phone. Trying to think. There's one of the moms I work with. Her name is Julia. She was so sweet and so nice. Always, she said, I'm the middle child, so all I want is for everybody to be happy. I need to make everybody happy, and that she said that, you know, quite often. And I think she would benefit a lot from learning from communication. She was a really good communicator because she wanted to have everybody happy. But I think boundaries and things like that would be a good thing. So, Julia.
Yeah, that's good. Appreciate you sharing that. I know for me, one of my former head principals, his name was Brian. I think he would benefit. He was very much a relational leader, and but learning how to, because he genuinely cared about people. But as we discovered tonight, there's a way to do that and still lead without just managing the different people. And we'll get into that a little bit this evening. So I appreciate everyone participating in the check-in. So let's take a look at some of our learning outcomes that we have lined up for us this evening. Understand the core principles of restorative leadership. So we'll look at that. We will identify different strategies for implementing restorative practices in leadership and analyze the impact of restorative leadership on organizational culture, and also develop skills to foster an inclusive and supportive environment. So, restorative leadership, just a little introduction to it. On your screen here, it says that it is a transformative approach that emphasizes healing, community, and relationship building within organizational settings. It does diverge from the traditional leadership approach, prioritizing relationship and putting people over projects and tasks. The idea of looking at, as a restorative leader, when you think of the word restore, and what comes to mind many times might be bringing back to what it was. And in this sense, restore is centered around the relationships that we're with, making sure that we're approaching them so that they don't tear down. So constantly with each interaction, restoring a new feeling, restoring new empathy, restoring new compassion. So think of restoration. A restorative leader has the high EQ, which is they're constantly working on improving their emotional intelligence. And that word restorative, as it pertains to a restorative leader, should be seen in the context of each new interaction. We're not taking the people we interact with for granted. We are restoring, think of a cup. And if you had inclusion and diversity and empathy and compassion and patience, these are elements that are filling up your cups, a cup of patience, a cup of empathy throughout the day.
Did he get cut off? Did he get cut off for you? Okay, I
Yeah,
don't think he
that-
knows that.
he's on pause.
Okay, let me go tell him.
Yep. Just you and me now. Maybe we should do this, do Zoom meetings. It'll be easier. Did you dye your hair? Mm-mm.
Sorry, I was muted.
I saw that right. I'm like, oh, she's muted. Did you dye your hair?
No, I just did it a different way. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like a red color from here.
Oh,
better.
yeah, I did make it lighter, but it's not, but that was a while ago, like a few months ago.
Oh no, I didn't notice it. I haven't seen you for a bit.
Yeah. He's supposed to be coming back on, but he's recording it for future, but he'll obviously delete this part that we're talking gibberish.
Oops, I forgot that part.
That's okay. Oh, I hope he can get back on. Because I'm on my hotspot. I'm not even on the Wi-Fi because it's been spotty all day. Like I've had issues with my clients. So I just
He said
got a
he's
hotspot.
he said he's been having problems since last week.
No, I know. I've had issues with my clients off and on. But it'll work and then it stops working. It'll work and then it's just very random.
Mm. Maybe I need to do that.
Is Aime with you?
No, I wasn't able to go pick her up. I'm gonna go get her afterwards at 6. I'm gonna go get her
Oh.
for her last little school shopping. Let's see.
Oh, where are you going?
We're gonna go to South Shore, Alameda. She's looking for shorts, so I was thinking maybe there's a Ross, Marshall, and Old Navy over there. Because we went to the thrift stores and she couldn't find anything.
What about the one that we went to? Did she find enough or she put most of that stuff back?
No, she got it. She just wants shorts now. She didn't find shorts over
Oh.
there. but she's looking for shorts.
Got it.
And that's yeah, and we couldn't find. We went to two more thrift stores, and she didn't find shorts.
Oh, wow.
So like one more place. So hopefully she'll find something.
All right.
Ah,
Sorry about that. We will try this again. For whatever reason,
I'm still spotty.
I have yeah,
Just FYI.
we'll try and navigate it. Yeah, that's all I can do. All right. As I was saying, with restorative leadership, the one thing I would like for us to take away is the idea that a restorative leader is one with high EQ, emotional intelligence, and restorative leadership diverges away from traditional leadership, and it takes a restorative leader is one that constantly keeps relationships in front of task and prioritized over task. The best way I like to describe it is think of all these things as a leader. Patience, direction, vision, compassion, empathy, understanding, listening skills. Think of those as being in various cups. And so restorative leader is not thinking of restoring relationships back to where they were when they started, but thinking and recognizing as a restorative leader, each one of those cups with every interaction with people on your team and the people that you're leading, they get emptied, they start to drain. And so you need to restore those cups in between interactions, in between meetings, each day, constantly refilling your compassion cup, your understanding cup, your patience cup. And so that's kind of the terms that we want to look at, or the analogy I like to use. Restorative leadership involves integrating restorative practices and restorative tools, and using those tools to improve team dynamics so that the teams can have a lasting impact, not only on the work they're trying to do in their respective communities, but also within the teams themselves. All right. So, first point that I want to bring out with restorative leadership has to do with empathy and connection. Empathy and connection. Understanding that connecting with team members on a personal level is essential in building stronger teams. And the question I have for us this evening, considering empathy and compassion, is how do you think leaders can balance personal empathy with professional boundaries and effectively lead their teams? So think about yourself in this space, whether you are leading your family, whether you are leading a group. How do you create, as a leader, personal connections, but still keep professional boundaries as you're leading? Maybe that's something you struggle with, or maybe you've got that down pretty good. So either way, either side of the coin, what do you find difficult in doing that, or where have you found success in doing that?
I would say, what came to mind first was the idea of caring deeply. Caring enough to ask the right questions, caring enough to ask any questions, actually, about that person, and giving them space to feel comfortable sharing their personal things, and not just brushing them off, the typical work environment situations where you're just passing each other, or even in a personal level, or, you're going to work, the kids are going to school, or, you're passing by, you're just talking about the bills, or you're just talking about the last meeting event. So what I have found is to care deeply, to really care about what that person likes, to really care about what they're interested in, whether you are or not, to give time and effort to that. And then, of course, after that, obviously not let it, like for a boss, for example, not let it linger enough that you're going to take everybody's problems with you back home. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. Nancy, what do you think?
Something that came to mind to me, and I don't know if that applies or not. So I had a situation at work today where we're doing some updates to the bands, whatever now, so they can synchronize them. Anyway, so I've been doing some errands and going back and forward. And today, a whole day, something so silly happened. But because of that, someone else was not able to start the shift on time on that vehicle. So the person who was supposed to start the shift reached out to me and was very upset, to say it pleasant. And my first reaction was like, I apologize. I was like, I am so sorry, because I didn't know if someone else was using it, to be honest. I thought it was done for the rest of the day because I was doing some work on it. So my first thing was, I apologize. Like, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I'm heading back, and he kept at it. So I was, what? I'm gonna just step back for a little bit, because my first attempt, my first thing to do is just like jump on it. But I'm not very good with conflict either. So I don't want to say, and I overthink things. So I'm like, you know what? I need to breathe it out, because he's upset right now. And I did tell my husband, I'm like, you deal with it, because right now I can't. And that's not right. And then as I was reflecting on it and thinking about it, it's like, I just have to, I think I did good, but just stepping back. And that's why I said, I don't know if it applies to it or not, because I just stepped back and I was like, I'm going to let it simmer for a little bit, let him cool off, because he's going through whatever his ship was so messed up and whatever. So he lost some money maybe. And not that it's my fault. I can feel guilty about it because it was out of my control. So there's nothing I can do about it. And I did apologize, and I will apologize tomorrow, because there was nothing, it was out of my control, completely out of my control. But I could feel his pain, because I've been in the same situation. So I know he was upset over that. So that's where the empathy, I think, comes in, when I was trying to, it's like, I understand where you've been at. I know how it feels. I know you're upset. So let you breathe, and I'll circle back, because right now you're heated and I can get heated. So so tomorrow I'll have a conversation. So hopefully that's part of what you're asking.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. The one thing I want to address with looking at empathy and connection, and where I hear both in both of those examples, the idea of Nancy strengthening that connection. If you would have addressed the situation then, knowing what you know about yourself, there's a good chance that connection could have weakened. And so sometimes it is important to step back and let things calm down and then come back, so that the connection can be strengthened. And the idea, Lisette, of, tapping into the people in the moment, and hearing their stories, but also making sure that you don't bring all of that back with you. One thing that I will try and iterate here is creating personal empathy and creating connections at work does not mean so the organizational landscape has shifted ever since COVID and the pandemic. So the corporate culture and office culture has shifted a lot. You have a lot more people working from home, et cetera. But there are still things that kind of are the overarching umbrella as it pertains to work culture. It is designed for the outgoing and the extroverted. If you are one that does not go out afterwards, if you are one that does not participate in the team games, if you are one that, just does your job and leaves, you can get dinged for that still in many places. Because, and even, working from home, the icebreakers, the Zoom calls, in your class, if you're in an online class in universities, you have to show up. So everything is still designed to connect and be face to face. And so for some people that might be shy or more introverted, this might seem like a huge obstacle to overcome if you're in a leadership position, especially if you're in middle management, where you're leading a team, but you have people over you telling you how they want that team to be led. But what I want, what I want to focus on is this idea of empathy and connection does not mean you have to give your personal information. It doesn't mean that you have to give your uh, personal life and story to people at work if that's not something you're comfortable with. Personal empathy is more along, and I like what you said, Lisette. You can be very empathetic. The situation that Nancy, you described is a work situation. Those are resources that are shared. There was an overlap in schedule. There's a conflict in schedule that was out of both people's control. That's a whole work situation, but there's still room for personal empathy. So personal empathy and professional boundaries. Many times leaders, this is not about telling people how many kids you have and when their birthdays are and inviting coworkers over to your engagement party and barbecue. It's not about that. There are other ways to find connection, and personal empathy is making sure that when your coworker is talking to you about the copier being jammed and they're the reason why it's jammed because you just used it and it worked fine, and now they've come up and you have shown them how to do it and they didn't pay attention and they've messed it up and now they're coming to you to talk about it. It means, as you said, Lisette, being in that moment and listening to and giving them maybe the benefit of the doubt to say, maybe they're distracted today. Maybe they have something else going on to where they couldn't remember what I said, or they're new here or whatever. And so this idea of empathy and connection is not about sharing photos and inviting people over to your house and having dinner, whether it be at church, whether it be in a homeowners association, a PTO. It does not mean you have to mingle and be extroverted. Empathy means that I'm going to give people the benefit of the doubt. And in professional settings, I'm not going to brush off any interaction as it's routine. I'm going to constantly keep this relationship a priority, specifically as a leader. So if you're a leader of 10 people and 7 people are coming to tell you the same thing that they don't like, you need to give the same attention to the 7th person as you did to the first person, even though you know what they're going to say. They don't like the new handbook. They don't like the new protocols. Whatever that might be, a restorative leader is one that will take a personal, empathetic approach to each interaction that they have with their teammate. Does that make sense? That's what we mean on the empathy and connection. It's not about, to be a good leader and a restorative leader, you have to open up the archives of your family and let professional people in. So one way you make personal empathy and keep professional boundaries is that you give adequate attention to professional situations and try not to have any situation when a person is sharing it become routine. A good example of this is there's a manager that notices a team member has been unusually quiet in meetings and seems disengaged. Instead of ignoring the issue or addressing it only in terms of work performance, the manager privately asks the employee if everything is okay, expressing genuine concern and willingness to support. This approach not only helps the employee feel valued and understood, but also fosters a deeper connection that can lead to more open communication and engagement in the workplace. So it doesn't mean you have to share everything. It means that you can look behind the scenes. And I noticed that when Lisette came in today, usually she's smiling, she brings coffee on Thursdays. Today she didn't. She brought the coffee, but she wasn't smiling. And so taking time to just in passing say, hey, everything all right? That right there, whether they answer you or not, that can encourage that person to know, hey, this is a person that recognizes me and sees me, and that can enhance their work performance. And you've done nothing outside of just making them relevant. Any other thoughts or comments on that before we move to the next one?
I like that word relevant, making them relevant.
Yeah, yeah. It is important. It is important. People should never feel mundane when they are in your presence. All right, let's continue on with the next thing we want to look at, and that is accountability and growth. Accountability and growth. It's important to create a culture where accountability is coupled with support, fostering personal and professional growth within the team. So before we get to that question, I will share an example that goes along with this. Let's say there's a project review, and instead of focusing solely on what went wrong, a leader uses the opportunity to facilitate a effective discussion among the team members. The leader encourages the team to identify both the successes and the challenges faced during the project. They discuss lessons and learn strategies for improvement. And then we can look at the errors as we go through that process. This approach not only holds the team accountable, but also supports the growth by turning mistakes into opportunities. A person that Lisette and I both know, Dr. Cheryl Kazinzu, she would use that phrase often when she would see things that were messed up. She wouldn't say, oh, that sign is messed up, or she was a provost of a university. And if you walk the campus with her, she wouldn't say the field needs new pavement, or those signs are crooked, or who did that marketing campaign. If she saw something that was messed up, she would often say, oh, there's an opportunity for us to better communicate. There's an opportunity for us to improve the field. There's an opportunity for us to build stronger relationships. So she was very common in using that phrase. So the question I have for us as it pertains to accountability and growth is, how do you think, in what ways do you think leaders can ensure accountability while still promoting a safe space for making and learning from mistakes? So I gave you one example. What would that look like on some of the teams you've been on before or current teams that you're leading? How can a leader ensure accountability by still making safe spaces for people to address their mistakes?
I like the idea of opening up the floor, even with kids, to see their own errors or their own areas of improvement, versus telling someone, this is wrong, you need to do better here. So I like the open discussion, to have people see in each other, like what they see in themselves, amongst their teams. So I think that to me is beneficial. What I have found, even in the evaluations, when my boss, the the previous boss before the one I spoke about, she would have me fill it all out first. And then what I realized is that we're harder on ourselves than the person that was technically evaluating us. So that was helpful to know. So
Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yeah, opening up the floor. Any other thoughts or suggestions to that? How leaders can ensure accountability?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, in what ways can leaders ensure accountability while still promoting space for making learning from mistakes? So if you have your team, how can you're not letting the mess up slide, but how can you turn that into a learning opportunity? What ways do you think leaders can do that?
Yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah, it's not an easy one. It's not an easy one. Opening up the floor, even with that, it is important to make that guided. A nice practice that comes to mind with the opening the floor is a process called roses and thorns. Um, um, I've heard speed bumps and roadways. People like to get cute. They don't like to say the same stuff, but um, roses and thorns, your what went well, that's the rose. Where's an opportunity to improve? That's the thorn. Um, Roadways, highways and speed bumps. Highways, what's going well? We're speeding, we're moving. Speed bump, that's where, hey, we had a hiccup there. So there's different ways to frame it, but it's important to give framing, in my experience, because if you just open up the floor for people to share, often it can become a gripe session. And so everyone just starts sharing about everything that's wrong. And depending on the context of the team you're leading, many of those things might be out of your control, right? We don't have, I think, I dealt in education. So you start talking about teacher salaries. You start talking about lack of resources. You start talking about lack of parent involvement. And you go on and on, you're in this discussion. Well, as an administrator, I can't make the parents be involved. I'm not in charge of your salary. The Board of Ed is. Um, we made our budget based on the resources we had. So if we spend the next hour talking about these things, it just promotes more things talking about what's wrong, as opposed to trying to be accountable. These are this is the budget we have, and how do we grow in this situation? Here's what went wrong, and how do we make it better? So yes, the idea of opening up the floor is an excellent idea. My experience and addendum to that is to make sure there's a framing of that rose and thorn and highway and speed bump is to let the people in the group know, as you're saying, say both what went well and where's the opportunity to improve, and creating spaces for that. And you'd be surprised that a lot of areas do not have those spaces. Um, and some areas only have those spaces in names. Think of surveys where they ask for feedback and then you don't ever hear what happened. You turn in the survey, you turn in a needs analysis, you turn in what you'd like. And, that speaks to something we talked about back in June on fair process, making sure that people are informed and engaged in the process along the way. Good comments on that. Appreciate that. All right. Lastly, we will look at our last point on this subject for this evening. And that is community impact. Understanding that as a restorative leader, it's not something that you turn on and off. Restorative leaders are people that understand that how you treat people in your home or on your team or at work needs to extend beyond that group. Otherwise, you're going to be seen as a hypocrite or non-authentic. Both are bad for team morale, and people really buying into. As a leader, you need followers, and people follow people that they believe in. And so, if you're creating all these spaces and being so empathetic and growing and creating that, and then when you're out at the restaurant, you're treating the server like trash, or the parking attendant, you're dismissive, those types of things. The work that you do needs to go beyond just that space that you're leading, so that people can see this is the type of person you are. So the question is, what are some challenges you foresee in extending restorative practices from eternal team to the broader community? So regardless of how good you are and you nail this down and you're being empathetic and compassionate, where might be some challenges on doing that outside of your comfort zone? Where do you see potential challenges in interacting with people that way?
This is the same question you had on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get a chance to read it all.
Yes.
I guess I would have to say is the rapport that's, if it's lacking in a rapport, in building a rapport, things can be misread and misunderstood. If you don't know where I'm coming from, or if you don't understand my way of speaking, it could be misread. So yeah, in that perspective, that's why it's important to build that rapport and build relationship and connection, so you can see how people function, how people speak, how people communicate, and not misunderstand. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think I understood.
Yes, it does. It's speaking from your place. Yeah, I think when we look at how do we extend it, restorative leader, going back to the original cup analogy, each time you pour from that cup, there's less in there. So each time I give some compassion, each time I give patience, I have a little less. And so one of the challenges is having enough to give. Some of these restorative approaches are hard enough with the team. When you get outside of your team, you don't know how people are going to respond. When I think of students when they're very young, and you are raised with how, depending on how you were raised, some people were raised with, you say thank you, you say please, you conduct yourself this way, and you grow up thinking that everyone is getting that instruction, because parents don't always say that this is how we do things. They say this is the right thing to do. And so young people grow up with a view of what right is, and then they are faced with different versions of right. And so I said thank you to you. And if you've ever been in a kindergarten class or a very young, preschool, kindergarten, they didn't say thank you. I said thank you, and they didn't say right, because they're faced with, wait a minute, I did this. I gave them a Valentine and they didn't say thank you. I shared. They didn't ask please. And, teacher, you said we're supposed to ask please, or my mom or my dad told me, said I'm supposed to ask please. And so the same thing moves forward, that when you're trying to be empathetic and create spaces for people to share. I think, Nancy, of your thing, you give it time and you come back in and you've given it time because you understand that replying to someone or engaging with someone when you're emotionally charged is not a good thing. So you give it time and you come back with the idea and the expectation that we've given it time to rest. And so now you're going to say, hey, let's have the discussion, but you're not in charge of that person's triggers. So they might go right back to elevated. And you're like, wait a minute, the purpose was to give it time. And so part of the challenge is when we look at whatever techniques we're using outside of the team and extending it to a broader community is, number one, the tools are difficult sometimes to use within your team. But then you're also, the broader it goes, you don't know what type of responses you're going to get. And then lastly, that if you keep extending it and extending it, you can run up against burnout. If you don't also know how to replenish those cups, how do you refuel? Are you taking care of your own self-care to where you're reloading with empathy and compassion? Or are you just going from one team member to the next, constantly putting out all of their fires, encouraging, making sure they're okay, making sure you make their environment as pleasant as possible so that they don't have to worry about anything. You're taking care of all the thorns, all the speed bumps. If you approach it that way, that can lead to burnout. All right. Any other comments or questions on that before we close out? All right. So I will wrap up with this. One last slide here. Restorative leadership, it says here on the screen, is not just a method, but a transformative approach that changes how leaders interact with their teams and community. The goal is to foster more inclusive and supportive environment. It's to build better relationships. The better the people are as human beings on your team, the better quality of work you will get from that team. Despite all the other metrics of making money and being successful and growing teams and businesses and accomplishing our vision and goals, all of that is done more efficiently, effectively, and collaboratively when you are taking the time to care for the people as human beings on your team. So I have a couple practical takeaways for us as I let you go. One is to think about in your space where you can implement reflection sessions, whether it's just you and another coworker or whether you are the leader and have that ability to put it in there, whether it's a small team, whether it's your family, whether it's a group that you're with. Get in the habit of having a time where you reflect regularly on the relationship or on the team, on the group dynamics. Find a way to put that in place. A place, as Lisette, as you said, to open up the floor. Are you regularly opening up the floor, or are you only opening up the floor when things go wrong? Right? If you make it routine, it becomes easier to handle with both successes and opportunities for improvement. The other practical takeaway I will give you today is to adopt a restorative communication framework. This just simply means provide a simple framework for communication that can be used by everyone to ensure people feel heard. I use the term relevant. What is a way that you can communicate? What is a protocol that you can put in place to suggest for the people that are relying on you that they can feel relevant to you? And they can communicate that to you and you're communicating that to them. It does not have to be elaborate. So don't get thrown off by the word framework. A framework is just an agreed upon process. That's it. It's You don't have to create a handbook. It's not, top 10 rules on how we're going to communicate every day before we go to bed or when we check in at work. It's not the words we're going to use when we say good morning. You must say good morning. Hi, my name is. A framework is just simply an agreed upon expectations on how we want to interact. That's all I have for us this evening. Any final thoughts or takeaways? Something that you considered fresh this evening? Something that you remember or share with someone else?
Just the fact again of reflecting on the relationship. I think that stuck with me the most.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else?
I'll go back to what I said. I like the making people feel relevant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All good things. Next week, if you're able to join us, we will be looking at change your thinking. If you change your thinking, you change your results.
Mhm.
A lot of times we focus on behavior. The way you change your behavior is change your action. The way you change your actions, you have to see different actions that involves thought. So we're going to look at that next week as it pertains to situational leadership, how to not hold grudges, how to move from situation to situation, how to treat people as individuals. So if you're able to join us next week, that should be good. Thank you for joining us this evening. And we will see you the next time you are able to join. You guys take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.